Hey, what's going on, everybody? I thought, it's going to be a little while longer until I get to until I finish the Sonic 4 video and the Sonic Mania video. And I thought, it's already been long enough. I'm coming back from my break. You guys need something to watch. And I also want to make a bit more of a chill video. What we're doing today? Well, you've obviously read the title and seen the thumbnail. So we are going through pretty much every single... There's a lot of them here. Pretty much every single Sonic game, rating the soundtrack to them on a scale of S to haven't played yet. Or, I'm going to turn that to haven't heard. I can't change it. Can I change it? There we go. This will be a very chill video. I'll probably, the way I edit this is when I'm talking about said game, I might put a song from that soundtrack in the background and that'll be it. Anywho, let's get into this. So first off, we have Sonic 1 for the Mega Drive, and I think this is such an amazing soundtrack. It's one of those ones that, not only because it's the first game, but it's one that you immediately think of when you think of this franchise, and that's purely because of how the music was done. Instead of it being just sort of video game music, it had followed the styling of the time, which was like pop and late 80s music, and it's been able to hold a place in people's minds because it's iconic, and it is just such a happy-go-lucky sort of type of soundtrack. Even like the more gritty pieces of music, you've got like Marble Zone, which is a lot slower, and Scrap Brain, which is obviously very, like I said, gritty compared to the rest of the soundtrack. It is still very upbeat because you're going on this adventure to defeat Dr. Robotnik and save the inhabitants of the island, and I think the music perfectly resembles that, because when you're at the end, you do get a sense of the journey's almost over, but there's still a fair way to go because of the level you're in. Everything's being thrown at you. I wouldn't say it's my favourite soundtrack, but I can't pull it any lower than A, because so many pieces of music has stuck around for so long, and that's purely because of how great the soundtrack is and how well it was made. Obviously, this is my opinion, so if you disagree or want to voice your own opinions, then let me know in the comments down below. Hopefully we'll have others posting or recording their own opinions of this board. So if you want to be a part of more things like this, because I do want to do more in the future, join the Discord server. Link will be down in the description below. We'll be doing a lot more community stuff because you guys mean the world to me. So next up is the Master System version, and while I think this is also a really solid soundtrack, I do think the 8-bit style of the Master System does hold it back a little bit. I think they've done an amazing job for what they set out to do. The new tracks sound amazing. You got like Bridge Zone, you got Jungle Zone, even Labyrinth with its own rendition. All sounds amazing. Obviously this tier list is the best Sonic soundtrack on its respective hardware, or what is the best they did with what they had kind of thing. It's what is my favourite, and part of my issue is just the 8-bit nature of it. I love all of the melodies, I love them. I'm not even saying I hate the 8-bit sound, it's just compared to the Mega Drive version, I don't think I can put it over that, but I don't know if I can pull it into B, because all of the songs sound fantastic. Like, they sound amazing. And like I said with earlier, I love remixes of these songs. I love more up-to-date versions, or even like 8-bit versions, but they don't have a limiter on them, so people do a lot more with them. They still convey that hopeful nature of the first game, with the journey ahead. It's still playing to that like late 80s, early 90s style of music. Even having some references in, especially Bridge Zone, if you know, and I love it. It is so good. I can't put it over Sonic 1 Mega Drive, purely because I love the Mega Drive sound. I think it's the twang, the kick drums, everything about it is great. And same goes for the Game Gear version. It's the same soundtrack, so these two are basically inseparable. They are the exact same. It's just the visuals for both of those games which are different, but the sound's the same. So next up we have a pretty heavy hitter, and that's Sonic 2 on the Mega Drive. And let me tell you, this is, I don't want to say a step up, but like, it rivals Sonic 1. They took what worked with Sonic 1 and just ran with it. You have a lot of different styles of music. You've got like they are working the Mega Drive chip as well. It's just, everything is incredible. It feels a lot more. I don't know why. I don't know if I'm the only one that feels this, but it feels a lot more cohesive than the first game. But by having all different sort of stylings, and it's because they all feel like their own song. I don't know if anyone else feels like that, because Sonic 1 it also does, but to me, I can, on the top of my head, really only fully remember, like, if I think of Sonic 1, without going into pure detail, I think of Green Hill, I think of Starlight, and I think of Spring Yard. With Sonic 2, that's a bit different. I actually think of pretty much the entire soundtrack except for Metropolis Zone, because nobody wants to remember Metropolis Zone. So I honestly, I don't know if I'll put it higher than Mega Drive, like Sonic 1. I think they're both neck and neck for me. I adore Sonic 2 because we got so many amazing songs from Chemical Plants, Aquatic Ruin, Casino Nights. Like, there's so many big hitters in this. Oil Ocean, like, that's also a really good song. Metropolis's music is great. It's the only good thing about about that zone is the music. It has to go neck and neck with Sonic 1. I can't put it higher than Sonic 1. I can put it higher than the 8-bit versions because that's just a no-brainer for me. I think I love the Sonic 1 and Sonic 2 soundtracks equally, because I don't think, because I was thinking like, oh, what is my least favourite song out of either of them, and that's how I would rank them, one higher than the other. But I don't think I don't like any of the songs in either of them. I love all of them. Even like the weird Eggman music, the Robotnik music in the Death Egg. You know, that song. That conveys like such a chaotic worry. Like that, it makes you so uneasy, and that works. Obviously, I wish they didn't loop it that quickly, but I wouldn't say it's a detriment to the song. I think it's cool. So Sonic 2 goes alongside Sonic 1 as my favourites for now. Next up, this one's going to be pretty quick. We have Sonic 2 Master System, so the 8-bit versions. I don't know why I said 2 like that. These are going to go below Sonic 1. I still think they are a solid A tier. They're probably going to be the lower of A tier. And once everything's done, after like I finished this, I'm going to go back there and move things around. So they might be moved down to B depending. But I think for now, they did what they wanted to do. There's a lot of good songs on there, like Underground Zone, that's always a favourite. I like that. But I just think I remember Sonic 1, like 8-bit soundtrack way more than Sonic 2. It's not because I played it more or anything like that. It's just, to me, they were still going for what the Mega Drive was going for. You know, those punchy pop songs. It just felt like a good 8-bit version of the soundtrack. Obviously, there was some differences, but the same styling and the same mindset was there. With Sonic 2 on the Master System, like the 8-bit version, it feels completely different. If it was its own game, then fine, but the fact that it's Sonic 2 and it's different, you know, to me, it just feels a bit lost. And I'm not saying it's a bad soundtrack at all, it's just, it doesn't have really that many memorable tracks for me except for Underground Zone and Green Hills Zone. You know, I can't think of really any others off the top of my head, and I think that it's a fine soundtrack. Again, that's why it would be an A or B. I don't think I'll pull it down to C, but, you know, I'm actually going to put it down to B. But I don't think it's a terribly amazing. I think it's just decent. So that's where I'm going to put that. I can't really go into much more detail about it because it just exists, kind of. I mean, the cool thing is that we got a early version of You Can Do Anything from Green Hills Zone, so that's kind of cool. You know, it's a fine soundtrack. Could be better, could be a hell of a lot worse. But next up we have Sonic CD, and I have just realised that this is going to be a bit of a problem because we only have one Sonic CD, and as we all know, there's two Sonic CD soundtracks. I'm going to do the Japanese soundtrack. That's what I'm going to do. So this is an easy S tier. S tier. This is still some of the best music in the entire franchise, in my opinion. It's got that perfect... It literally takes what Sonic 1 had laid out as a blueprint and worked on it, but in CD quality. So we have so many amazing pieces of music. And there's so many like big heavy hitters for the franchise that originates from this game, and it's kind of a little bit of a revolutionary soundtrack for me because it showed what Sonic music could be outside of just the simple 16-bit style. It sounds amazing. It has that like feel of wonder, of hope, but also has the complete 180 of that. It has like the fear and the worry, especially from like Eggman and the boss fights, then you know, all that music. It's great. It's honestly some of the most varied music in a Sonic game, and for a 90s classic game, that is amazing. It's one of those titles that shouldn't have been as big of a deal as it was, but it is the soundtrack complements what the game is, which is a bigger version of Sonic 1. You know, and that gameplay style and the level design, and you know, it was ramped up to 1,000, and the music complements that 100%. You know, we have Palm Tree Panic, Stardust Speedway, Collision Chaos, all of them are fantastic. In the Japanese soundtrack, I don't think there's a single, off the top of my head, I don't think there's a single miss. All of it is incredible, especially the Act Clear music. I love that song so much. But yeah, easy S tier for me, easy S tier. If you want to know where I'd put this US soundtrack, and I know a lot of people think it's underrated and all that stuff. If you like it, that's great, but for me it's going to be like D or E tier. Personally, I don't jam with it. There's a couple of songs I know I'm like, okay, this is kind of cool, but I don't think the soundtrack fits the game that well, and it's a bit all over the place if you ask me. Anywho, now we have Sonic Chaos, and this one's a bit of a funny one because I actually really enjoy this soundtrack. You know, we have a Gigopolis Zone, Mecha Green Hill. It's a fun little game with a cool little like soundtrack to it. Obviously it's its own game this time. It's its own title. It's the first Sonic game, like 8-bit game, I believe, to be its own, like on its own 2 feet, like, and not a tie-in. I could be wrong about that. Maybe a Tails game came out before this, I can't really remember, but it has a great little soundtrack, but I think it doesn't hurt my ears nearly as much as Sonic 2 did, in terms of how crunchy the soundtrack is. I could be wrong, but to me it doesn't feel nearly as annoying in my ears. And there's some great little underrated songs in here, but I think I won't pull in A. I think it's definitely a B tier game soundtrack. It's a nice little game, and the soundtrack is very upbeat. It is trying to go for that classic era soundtrack style, which is, you know, I keep saying it, the late 80s, early 90s style. I think it does a better job than Sonic 2 in that regard, but I don't think it's even close to Sonic 1 on the 8-bit systems. Like, that is up there with the original Sonic 1 on the Mega Drive for me. So up next we have Sonic and Knuckles. I don't know where Sonic 3 is on this actually. Is it? There's Sonic 3, but is that the PC port version? I don't know. It's down there for a reason. Right, I'm just going to say this is Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Fair? Let's do that. So this is easily a S tier. Not better than Sonic CD. That's going to be a hard one to beat for me personally, but this is a great send-off for the classic 2D games on the Mega Drive. I think, obviously we all know with Sonic 3 the storytelling, they added a lot more cutscenes, but also this was the introduction to the Act 2 having its own theme, and it's something that stayed with the series ever since, and it's so cool. All of the music in this game is stellar. I don't think there's a single bad track in this game. Knuckles' theme is perfect. It characterizes him amazingly from the start. You know, we keep that styling of music for Knuckles. Obviously it gets reinterpreted, but that stays, that stuck, and he was here. It was there in the first game he ever appeared in. You know, Angel Island, fantastic music. Hydro City, fantastic music. That is incredible. Like, there's so many amazing tracks on this. Even Death Egg, like it takes what the first two games wanted to do and just expands on it. It has that feeling of a journey again, but it's a lot more in depth. Like, you can tell, like, they ramped up the wanting of like the pop feeling and, you know, things like that. It feels really, really nice to listen to. Hearing remixes of any of these tracks are incredible. It's just a really, really solid game with a really, really amazing soundtrack. And I love it when a soundtrack also helps with storytelling. I love it when games do that. And, you know, the fact that this came out in 94 and this was happening, I think is probably one of the earlier instances of that happening, probably. Like, this game has such an incredible soundtrack. I could not pull it any lower than S. It is top tier. It's going to be a hard one to beat for sure. Let's move on to the next one, otherwise I'll be talking about this game and its soundtrack forever. Right, we have Sonic Triple Trouble. Even though it uses the 16-bit fan games artwork, we're going to be doing the 8-bit version because that is what it's here for. There's no other fan games and stuff on here. So, this is an easy B tier. I much prefer it over Chaos's. It just has that classic feel to the music. I don't know how else to describe it. It's just fun. It works with the zones. It gets you upbeat. It's put in the chipset, the Game Gear. It's testing it with its soundtrack. It's layered. It doesn't feel simple or anything like that, which I like. It is just a great little soundtrack that pushes the Game Gear to its absolute limits, and I love that for it. Again, I don't think it touches Sonic 1 on the 8-bit systems, but it's a damn good, solid soundtrack. Now we have Knuckles Chaotix, which I was tempted to put in S, but I'm going to put it in high A. I actually like it over the original Sonic 1, and that's purely because it feels like a dream. This soundtrack is so chill, and like when it wants to be, and it just feels like a dreamscape. And I don't know if that's what it was going for, but a lot of the music is just so chill and you just want to get through it. And the 32X sound chip, again, I'm not a musician, so I'm probably getting all this wrong, like the lingo and stuff, but it just adds such a unique sound to it. So if you hear a remix that uses something from the 32X or something from the Mega Drive era, you will hear it and be like, that is from Knuckles Chaotix. Like it is such a good use of the extra hardware. And I love the sound. It sounds amazing. It fits every single act and zone perfectly. Even the final boss sounds great. The special stage music is some of my favourite in the entire series. It's not my favourite, but it's up there. And the fact that it's coming from a spin-off title on the hardware that basically killed Sega in terms of like making consoles, I think that says a lot. And it's also why it's one of the few games that people remember, even though it's not really a good game in the slightest in terms of the actual double ring mechanic, and it's all over the place. People remember it for two things: its visuals and its soundtrack. Also, I think the final boss as well, but the soundtrack is definitely up there, one of the reasons. And the reason why I didn't pull in S is because there's one or two songs where I'm a bit iffy with. They're not terrible, it's just I'm not a massive fan of. And I think S deserves to be the best of the best, where they're perfect. Or I don't have a little problem with them, or I don't think there's a game that could beat them, if that makes sense. That's why I didn't put Sonic 1 up there, because I do feel like there are some soundtracks that are better than it. S tier is basically I feel like they're all my favourite. They're all the same top. There's not one better than the other. So I have to put Knuckles Chaotix at a high A. It's a great soundtrack. If you haven't listened to it, then please do yourself a favour and just listen to it, especially like Dawn to Summer. Marina Madness is another, Midnight Greenhouse is another amazing track. Like, it is just a fun, chill track, and I really recommend you go and listen to this. Right, Sonic Blast. Need I say more? It is such a forgettable soundtrack. Are you kidding me? Like, it's well, the game in general is just. No, you know what? I'm just going to say one sentence that makes this placement make sense. It is the last Sonic game that released on the Game Gear, and it made the Game Gear have a bit too much of an extended lifetime. It went on for too long, but they wanted a Sonic version of the Donkey Kong Land series where they've taken the pre-rendered styling and put it into an 8-bit form, but it's not a good game. The soundtrack is incredibly forgettable. Like, the only decent song in it, I think, is Green Hill Zone. But even then, it's such a forgettable, sad soundtrack. I've heard some remixes of some of the later songs, which was cool. They sound nicer there, but in the base game, they just don't hold a candle to any other, I'm going to move up to D, because I feel like it's forgettable though. F tier is like S tier with it. I don't think there's anything worse than the F tiers. They're all going to be the same, I believe, unless I say it differently. But I think E is just for songs and games that are just forgettable, and it's definitely forgettable. Definitely. I don't know what else to say about it. I don't think there's really a redeemable quality about Blast or its soundtrack, so I'm not going to put it in F. It's just extremely forgettable. Next up, we have Sonic Pocket Adventure, and this game has... I'm going to just cut to the chase. It deserves to be in C tier because it's, I'm going to put it like A. It's a good soundtrack, but it's literally just Sonic 3 songs put into a Neo Geo Pocket Color. The other weird thing is that obviously Sonic Pocket Adventure is just a Diet Sonic 2. So it's weird that they did that with the Sonic 3 soundtrack and not the Sonic 2 soundtrack, but hey, what do I know? It's a fine little soundtrack. It's just, like, it kind of works. None of the songs sound inherently bad. It's just, there's a better version of the soundtrack out there. You know, it does what it needs to do. You know, I'm going to put it in C. It does what it needs to do, but it's forgettable in the sense of I don't think it's better than Sonic 3 and Sonic & Knuckles. It's just there. But I do recommend you go and listen to it. It's not bad. It's just... it doesn't really fit the game. Like, I even think they use Sky Sanctuary's music for the Doomsday-esque boss, which I always find strange. But it deserves to be in C because it's very middle of the road. It's a fine soundtrack, just there's a better version out there. Right, now we move on to Sonic Advance. This soundtrack is fun. It is really nice. I think it deserves to be in B tier. It does what it says on the tin. It's an advanced version of a 2D classic game, and the music does it does that too. It's a very mixed. It's a very mix between the classic titles style of music, but also the Dreamcast era in terms of going for a more jazzy and even in some cases a bit more of a rock influence. I'm not going to say butt rock or hard rock, but you can tell it's a bit more there than the classics. And it's great. I wouldn't say it's up there with some of my favourites, but it does its job extremely, extremely well. Neo Green Hill is great. All of the stages soundtracks are great. I love the boss theme as well, and the pinch mode. That is great. It's some of my favourite 2D music, but I can't pull it over the Mega Drive stuff because I feel like there's just that extra layer of polished. I don't say polished. Extra layer of quality, I guess, to it. I'm not a musician, so I don't really know the terms, but I think it's a great soundtrack, and there's some better examples of working with the GBA sound font. I know people are going to be annoyed with me saying that. I can't think of another word. Sound chip. There you go. In its own series, because next up we have Sonic Advance 2, and that's an easy low A tier for me. I think a lot of the soundtrack is phenomenal. There's a couple in there where I'm eh, but things like Leaf Forest, that is such a great piece of music. You got Music Plant, there's a lot of great underrated songs in the soundtrack, and I think it fits the style of this game more, because Advance 1 was very much hey, here's a classic game with the current modern designs, but the gameplay was pretty much the same, which isn't a big deal. It was fine. It's a fun game. But with Advance 2, they obviously added this boost mechanic of get to your top speed, and you get that extra burst, and you got to keep it going. Very classic in creation, but very modern in flair and just overall design. But the music goes along with that. A lot of these pieces of music are so upbeat and makes you want to keep that momentum going, and entices you to be okay, let's figure out the ways to go forward to keep my momentum as best as possible. And I really, really, really like that, because the level design in Sonic Advance 2 is, I think, a bit of a step down than Advanced 1 in, I'd say, the first half of Advanced 1, because it kind of nosedives at the end, but I think the music makes up for that. So you've got things like Hot Crater as well. That is such a great track, and it makes you just want to keep going. If the music was a lot more classic styled, it wouldn't really work, I don't think, because you'd be enjoying yourself, and the music would still be styled after the zone and whatever, but you wouldn't have that feeling of wanting to flow through the stage perfectly, I feel like the soundtrack does so much for this game, but I don't know if I prefer it over the Master System version of Sonic 1. Hot Crater is a jamming track, so is Bridge Zone. You know what? I'm going to put it in between. That's what I'll do. Perfect. Advance 3, gonna be honest, I like a lot of these tracks, but I don't think I like it nearly as much as Advance 2. I think it's a great soundtrack. I think it's a great send-off to the Dreamcast era. I love the credits music. Route 99 is another great track. There's a lot of other great tracks, but I don't think I like it nearly as much as Advanced 2. I think I probably like it as much as Advanced 1, but that credits music makes me like it more. Just a little bit more. It's one of my favourite tracks in the entire game. I don't really have much else to say about it. It's still like, it captures what the first 2 games did. You know, just it's the same sound, font, chip, whatever, and does what it needs to do. I don't know what to tell you. Right, next up we have Sonic Rush and Sonic Rush Adventure. I'm going to merge these 2 together because you probably know where I'm going to put these. High A tier. And you're probably thinking, why not S tier? And it's purely because of the system it's on. I think they have done an absolutely incredible job with the soundtrack. Like, making it work on a DS, like, that is great. But I've always felt, when going through and listening to Sonic Rush, it does feel a bit empty. And while that does work in the game because of the whole, yeah, when you're doing tricks and things and the sound effects and that, I just, when I'm going back to listen to it, it feels a bit too empty for me. That does hinder my experience a little bit. I think they're great songs. I don't really think there's a bad song in this, especially I love the Act Clear jingle. I don't think I can put it in S tier purely for the fact of I don't enjoy how empty it can be. But again, that doesn't mean to say I don't like it. I love the soundtrack. It's just S tier is the best of the best for me personally. The Rush series is going to be in the A tier, like high A tier for the entire thing. I don't think I'll ever put it into mid to low tier. And it's not going any lower, just in general. Much respect to these games. Both soundtracks are equally amazing, and you know, they push the boundaries of the system. But just music alone, A tier, high A tier. Next up we have Colors DS, which I think I'm just going to put behind the Rush games because they managed to put, actually, you know what? I think I'm going to put it above, I'm going to put it here. Because they just managed to get the Colors music onto the DS. It's just a bit more it's just a bit more bit crushed. You know, it's fine. It sounds great. It's just much like Pocket Adventure. There's just a better version of the soundtrack out there. But for what it was set out to do, it's great. But the soundtrack is pretty much the same, except for the special stages. Because obviously there's special stages in Colors DS, but not in base Colors, which I will always wonder why, because I would have loved to have seen a fully HD version of the half pipe special stage, like the Colors one, because the DS Colors special stages are some of the best interpretations of the half pipe. But yeah, Colors DS is a bit of a weird one because it does everything it needs to do really well, but I can't put it above like the Game Gear version of Sonic 1, Advance 2, the Mega Drive games. It's just not that level, but it's still a great soundtrack. Like, I would recommend you listen to it, especially the special stage music. It's a great piece of music. But next up we have Generations 3DS, and this goes in, it's going to be difficult, B tier. It's going to be a high B tier game, purely because while it does have similarities with a couple of songs from the main game, we got a lot of new, I'd say. Okay, so we have Green Hill Casino Night, which is straight from the DLC from Generations, the pinball stage. We have Mushroom Hill, which sounds great. We then have Emerald Coast, which was a great remix. Then we get onto Radical Highway, which sounds like somebody who has IBS and has been stuck in an elevator for like 45 minutes after eating something they shouldn't have. I just think quality-wise, some of the songs are incredible. Like, they just are. But I can't look past Radical Highway's music because that is just really bad. Like, both Act 1 and Act 2, no good, in my opinion. They just sound so ear grating. You know, it's just not fun to listen to, having to slob through the stage just because of that. So it goes in the high B tier because there's a lot of really good songs in there, but that knocks it down a lot. That the highway. Again, let me know what you think about that, because am I being too harsh? I don't really know. I don't think I am. You know, I think if one song makes me so unhappy, I'd skip the stages. I think it deserves to be in a B tier, because if the whole game was like that, it would definitely be in C or D. E or D or E. Oh, I can't speak. D or E. But because the rest of the soundtrack has a lot of bangers, and even the Heroes special stage music got remixed for its special stages, you know, it's cool. It's just that makes the journey so annoying. Oh boy, look what we have next. Sonic 4 Episode 1. D tier. And now hear me out. Reason it's not an E tier is purely because the melodies of these tracks are really, really goddamn good. Even before the remix came out from TIERLIST and June Soooooo, I had been saying for a while that the pretty much majority of the soundtrack, like the melodies, were great. It's just that awful fake Mega Drive, whatever you want to call it, music. It was just not good. Not good in the slightest. Mad Gear Zone is especially not great. Special stage music is clearly trying to go for that Sonic 1 style, and I don't think it works personally. It sounds like they're just doing the opposite notes or whatever that from Sonic 1, and it sounds off because of it. I would much rather them do like a completely different dreamy psychedelic song instead of try and replicate the style, the style and the feeling of the first game's music. I just think it's kind of forgettable in a lot of ways because of the instruments that they used. Otherwise, I would put this in a high B tier. I love Splash Hill's melody. I think it's a very fun time. A lot of the rest of the soundtrack is fine. Like, I actually don't mind Lost Labyrinth if it was well done, like executed. I think that would be kind of cool. Even if they did it in the proper like Labyrinth style, I've heard that, and that sounds pretty nice as well. Now we have Sonic 4 Episode 2, and I'm going to put this above Episode 1. I think it's a massive step up in a lot of ways, visuals, all that, even the soundtrack. It's a lot nicer, but I think you all know what I'm gonna say. Eggman's boss fight and Oil Desert Zone, or I should say, the Sitting Ducks Zone. Every day I'm shuffling. The quacks, the awful pinch mode music. There was a reason why they didn't use that in Sonic 3D Blast. It's so just bleh. And obviously it's not perfect. Sylvania Castle is a really nice stage. I actually really like the music. Again, it would be better if they didn't have this fake Mega Drive sound to it, but I think it's a step up. But Oil Desert, whatever it's called, that is bad. That is really bad, and it's just a lot of little pieces of music in the game where I'm just like, that doesn't sound that good. It would sound way better if it was, you know, actually properly done and not like a fake Mega Drive, or you go for like the full Mega Drive sound and like make it specifically designed for that. And I've heard Mega Drive remixes of these songs which sound really good. That's just it, unfortunately. I can't really say much else. The two games are very forgettable, and the soundtracks complement that, unfortunately. Right, next up we have Sonic Boom Shattered Crystal. This is very forgettable, so it's going to go into E. Hi guys, Gam from the edits here. I'm obviously going through this, you know, adding the stupid silly memes and trying to get this actually out on at some point, because it's taking bloody forever to remind myself. Anyway, I've just realised what a complete and utter muppet I have been. What an absolute plonker. I mixed up Shattered Crystal and Fire and Ice's music when I did this. I am going to say this now. Don't listen to what I say about each soundtrack. I'm just going to say my thoughts here because I'm an idiot. Shattered Crystal is incredibly forgettable. It is so, like, it's not a terrible soundtrack. It's better than OG Boom, but it's incredibly just there. And it just isn't a memorable soundtrack. It doesn't sound like a Sonic soundtrack. It sounds more like in the vein of maybe Ratchet and Clank, I guess, or Spyro. Like, it would fit those game franchises more. There'll still be terrible songs in their respective game franchises, but it would fit more than Sonic. On the other hand, I actually really like Fire and Ice. I don't know what I was on when I was recording this. It's so long ago. I'm so glad I just found this. I really like it because it's done by the same guy who did Sonic R, Richard Jacks. I don't know how to say his last name. I'm so sorry. I'm British. I am dumb. So, yeah, I really like it. It has that very Saturn vibe. There's some songs in there, but it definitely deserves to be above Sonic 4 Episode 1 and 2 for sure. I would probably put this in C tier. I don't know what I was on about when I was recording this. Maybe it was one of the days where I didn't sleep the greatest, but yeah, so don't listen to me. I'm going to cut them out. What you see on the actual screen where they are, don't listen to it. Just remember that Shattered Crystal needs to be an E tier. That was correct, but what I was talking about, it was wrong. And Fire and Ice should be in C tier. Anyway, get back to the video. Hopefully I don't need to make another one of these stupid interruptions because I've done something stupid. Mania. Bada bing bada boom. Best of the best of the best. S tier. Easy. Mania, when it came out, was such an amazing breath of fresh air. 2017 and like a couple years before was a rough year to be a Sonic fan. We had a lot of just bad news, critics panning the series left and right, YouTubers just making fun of the series for the 11,000th time, and Forces got announced, and we all know how that went.
Together we each other.
But here was a little pocket of goodness that came out of literally nowhere. And from the reveal trailer, it set the fact that 90s, classic Sonic was back. Not Sonic 4 Sonic, not Generations classic Sonic, but OG classic Sonic, styling, the music, like the level design, everything screams that era, but with a new coat of paint, and that's what the music does. It is literally the same stylings, the same mindset from those classic games, but brought into new light, but with T-Lopes at the helm, which means it was hella funky, and I cannot thank him enough. It was because of T that I found funk in general, and is now one of my favourite genres of music, and I was so happy when I heard that he was working on Mania. It's such a good game. Every single piece of music in that entire game is amazing. It definitely helped a lot of Sonic fans regain their trust in the series, or regain why they liked the series in the first place. You know, a lot of people grew up with the classics, and seeing this come out of nowhere and be almost perfect in every way was so amazing. And like, even if it had a bit of a half-assed soundtrack, it being a high A just, not for music, but I'm just saying it'd be a high A in terms of my favourite game ever, and that says a lot. But the music goes a long way, as we will now find out with Sonic Superstars, because man, what a mixed bag this is. I've already talked about this. I did my own tier list on stream like a little while ago, talking about my favourite and least favourite songs from this game, but I adore Superstars. It's one of the best classic games in my opinion, but, and it's a big but, music does so much to a game. Like I said, Sonic Mania, for instance, would be dropped down to an A if its music wasn't great. And I wanted to adore Superstars. I really, really did. Like, the base game of Superstars, I really wanted to like. The level design was fun. The bosses were, I thought, were fun. They needed to be in their own act though, or have more phases instead of like taking forever. But man, I was so bummed out by the music. Some of it is some of the best music in the series, and I will die on that hill. Bridge Island is amazing. Pinball Carnival is some of my favourites. Sand Sanctuary, Chef's Kiss 1,000 times. But for every zone like that, we have other zones that have the awful Sonic 4 sounding melodies, and it's an improvement from Sonic 4, don't get me wrong, it really is, but they don't hold a candle to some of the other songs in the soundtrack. It makes it feel so lost. And the other thing I have a problem with is what we talked about earlier with Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and how, you know, its storytelling worked so well with the music, because the music was a big, like, it worked alongside it. So having Act 1 and Act 2 being the same song, but Act 2 having a different like melody or having references to Act 1, it made everything feel joined together, and like this was its own world, and it felt great. The wild thing is that we know nothing really about the soundtrack and who worked on what outside of the small soundtrack that they gave out, and it's been months since this game has come out, and it's really strange that we don't know who worked on what still. We know nothing. But we do know that there was a lot of different composers. The Jungle Zone, I can't remember the name of it, the second zone, that doesn't flow. Like, I love T. Lopes' Act 1, that is quintessential classic Sonic, I adore it. Act Sonic sounds great, and Act 2, for the little bits we heard, sounds awesome. But they don't work together, and that affects me so much in gameplay. Like, it's jarring. It's all over the place. It doesn't flow, and it is something I was thinking about through pretty much both my major playthroughs of the game. So it has so many ups, but its lows are pretty low. Like the credits music, for instance, that is some of the worst music I've heard in a classic game. Not saying it's the worst, but it's some of the worst. Like, I was so sad when I beat the game and I heard that music. Like, usually you'd be like uplifted, oh, I finally did it, but I'm glad that they did the thing that Mania didn't, which was going through the zones individually, I don't know what you'd call it, but in the music you go through each zone and it links up just like the classics. But I think I much rather would have had the Mania approach to the credits music if it was instrumented like that, if it was done like that, and not this hollow sounding Mega Drive. I love Jun Sonoe. His music is amazing on guitar, real instruments. I'm not one of those people who wants the Mega Drive music to go. I really don't, because you can do some killer stuff with it, or maybe mix it in with some real instruments. That could be fun, like bring that twang back, that Mega Drive twang. June needs to stay away from it. Again, like I said earlier, it's a massive step up from Sonic 4, I really do believe that. but it's still not great. And it's making people really dislike the Mega Drive sound, and we need to stop that from happening. The Mega Drive was such a massive point of Sonic's life, you know, the Sonic series' life, sorry. That's where everything started. And I think what you could do is just do a Generations, you know, what you did for Classic in Generations. That is the route I would take if there was to be a Superstar sequel. I'm crossing fingers that there are more sequels on the way for this style of game. I love Superstars. Does it have problems? 100% it does. Like the backgrounds and obviously the music. But there needs to be more cohesion and more like direction that makes sense music wise. So I'm gonna have to put Superstars in. God, the highs are so good. I'm gonna put it here, and then I'm also gonna move Sonic 2 down to C tier. That's where I'm putting Superstars. I'm not gonna put it in C because the really well composed music, even though some of it doesn't work together, on its own sounds incredible. I'm not talking about the Fang theme. That thing needs to just. Oh, that's bad. But the fully composed stuff sounds incredible. It really, really, really does. So I can't put it any lower than a B. 3D Blast. Oh crap, this is another one that has 2 soundtracks. I'm gonna put. You know what? I'm gonna say the Mega Drive version. Both soundtracks are actually awesome, unlike how I feel about the CD soundtrack. I think both soundtracks are incredible. I think I would view them as the same. I like them for different reasons, but I think I like them both the same amount, so this actually kind of worked out. I'm going to put this in A tier, above Knuckles Chaotix, for 2 reasons. I think the Mega Drive music is some of the best Mega Drive music on the console, and the Saturn version has the best special stage music in my opinion. Like, that is jamming. But alongside that, you also have like Rusty Ruin. Like, there's so many amazing songs. Like even Green Grove, like Saturn is. There's so many good songs, and especially the Saturn is such an underrated soundtrack. It's definitely one of those ones where you either love it or you hate it. But if you love it, you love it. You know. I would really recommend you go out of your way and listen to it. It's so good. Next up is Adventure, which is S tier. Easy. I love Adventure. It is such an amazing soundtrack. It's one I go back and listen to so often. Like, every piece is just incredible. Again, it has that classic feel of different genres for different things, but also having like a cohesive butt rock throughout. It's just such a good soundtrack to bring Sonic into the 3D landscape of gaming. It is so good, and it stands the test of time. There's a reason why people still listen to it today. It just has that feel-good nature to it, and also each character theme represents a character perfectly. It's just such a good soundtrack. SA2 also belongs up there, even though I don't like the game nearly as much as Adventure 1, and I do think it's a bit overrated in my opinion. I think the soundtrack is also well deserving of an S tier status. It is perfect. Pyramid Cave, like, oh, that is some of my favourite music in the series. Obviously you got Live and Learn, you got all this other, like, both soundtracks here are amazing. Tracks I will always go back to, tracks even if I wasn't a Sonic fan anymore, I would go back to. Like, they are that good. Like, as music, they can stand on their own. They don't need to be tied to a video game, you know, they're that good. All of the S tier ones are that good. Right, next up you have Heroes, which, oh god, where am I going to put it? This has to be S tier as well. I love Heroes' soundtrack. It's very upbeat, like friendly, but when it gets down to like the nitty gritty, it has that adventure, you know, butt rock to it, and I love it. Like the music for cutscenes is great. The character themes again are great. The music for the stages are awesome. The bosses, like this is again a soundtrack I would go back to, or like a lot of the time. It's so good. And a lot of people sleep on Heroes because it's not a great game in my opinion, but the soundtrack does it justice. It is really damn good. Next up is Shadow, and I have played for Shadow I think like 3 or 4 times. Some music in it is great, but it's not really my cup of tea. I do love the Eggman theme remix, that is awesome. But I don't know if I prefer it over some of the titles above. I'm gonna have to put it in C tier. I'm actually gonna move Superstars up to here. There we go. I'm gonna have to put it in C tier. That is... I think the game is fine. It's not a game I would go back to. It exists, you know. Some of the music in it is great, but I will say a lot of it goes a bit too heavy. Obviously, it's a much darker tone game, so that will happen. Some people will like that bit happened. Me personally, I am not a fan, really. It is what it is. Not everyone's going to like the same kind of stuff. It's a fine soundtrack. It's just a soundtrack I won't really go out of my way and listen to unless it's the Eggman theme, you know. Next up we have 06, which, despite everything else, soundtrack is an easy S tier. Like, it is such an amazing soundtrack. Really shows that what they were planning on was a fully AAA next-gen Sonic game. Wave Ocean, like all these stages sound incredible. Obviously it was a new era in terms of the styling of music. It was going for a bit more of a cinematic kind of feel, but the butt rock and that style of like heavy guitars was still there. The final boss music is great. I just think that, oh, I do say this has been beaten by other Sonic tracks in the past, mainly for style reasons. I still think this is some of the best music out there. Do I think it's as good as Adventure? Yeah, I do. You know, I do think it's as good as Adventure, but for different reasons. It allows more musical instruments to flow through it. Again, like I said, it was more cinematic. I definitely believe this should be an S tier. This is definitely an S tier soundtrack. Is one of the only good things about 06. Like, in its current state, I'm not talking about P06 or anything else like that. Right, next up we have Secret Rings, and I'm immediately putting this in B tier, especially low B tier, because it's not my cup of tea. I'm going to say that straight out of the gate, because I know a lot of people really like this soundtrack, but I think it's a bit too much for me. It's not something I'll go out of my way and listen to. I think it's really well made. I think it's, you know, it's different. It fits the styling of the game, like the Arabian sort of setting, but I don't enjoy it, and obviously this is a tier list of stuff I would enjoy, and I just, some tracks are fine, but some are a bit all over the place. I'm gonna put it in C tier. Sorry guys, it's not a soundtrack I'm particularly fond of. But again, like I said earlier, it'd be weird if we all like the same sort of thing, you know. I think it works as a storybook, you know. OST, I think it works really nicely with setting and everything, but it's too loud, it's too, like, I don't really like the genre of music. I do like Seven Rings in Hand though, that's a good song, I do like that. But apart from that, it's a bit all over the place for me personally. But it's not poorly made, so that's why it's in like a low C tier. Next up we have Unleashed, and that's whoop all the way to S tier, some of the best Sonic music ever. Windmill Isle, love it. I don't even need, like, there's no reason I should have to say why this is an S tier. It is just some of the best music we've gotten in ages, and it also shows that if you get the feeling right of a track, you don't need guitars, because it's cinematic but also very uplifting. It's like a mix between 06 and the adventure era games, and I love it. It is such a great soundtrack. We also got Eggman's theme, I forgot to mention, in 06, that carried on, I believe, up until Colours, I want to say, because I don't, was it in Generations? It might have been in Generations. Unleashed has such an amazing, varied soundtrack. The whole thing is, it's a world adventure. That's what it's called in Japan, Sonic World Adventure. So the music represents each country it goes in perfectly. I love it. It's some of the most varied musically, but it is still so cohesive in the styling and making it sound like a Sonic soundtrack. It's kind of what I wanted for Frontiers, I'm not going to lie. I wanted this sort of upbeat, powerful soundtrack, and I hope the Frontiers sequel is more, maybe leaning more into Unleashed styling, or another soundtrack which I will talk about in a little bit. But it's a great game. And the soundtrack, just like how I said earlier, it feeds the story perfectly, and also allows you to get to grip with the characters properly and how they feel. It's a perfect soundtrack. It is so good. Right, next up we have Sonic and the Black Knight, which is also an S-tier soundtrack for me. I think every piece of music in this game is incredible, where if it's a remix or if it's original. With Me is possibly one of my favourite final boss pieces, both Crush 40 and the normal version. This has some of the best Crush 40 music in it. Live Life is one of the best Crush 40 songs in my opinion. And if they didn't go for the Unleashed approach, I was kind of hoping they'll go for the Black Knight approach for Frontiers. I think this has some of the best music for an open world or open zone Sonic game. So I really hope the next game leans into either of those two games. They are incredible, and unlike Secret Rings, I think this perfectly works with the story, but without it being too much. So, like I said, I think Secret Rings' soundtrack works with it, but I think it's a bit too over the top. I think you can have a couple or a fair few songs that are over the top, but you need some of the easier to digest songs alongside it, and Sonic and the Black Knight is that in spades. It has a lot of just calming but atmospheric tracks in it, while also having your usual heavy butt rock music. I don't know what you would call it, but With Me, for instance, the final boss music is great. It's incredible. Like I said, it's one of my favourite final boss music in the entire series. And it's also, like I said of Unleashed, also very cinematic in cutscenes and things. It has a lot of motifs from other games, but also in its own game you would hear character character snippets in the music in cutscenes. Unleashed was full of that, and it's something I love, and I really, really wished I would bring back to a almost in your face degree, because it puts a smile on my face, and it's one of those things where if you don't notice it straight away, you'll notice it at some point in the future and be like, that is cool. It's cool realizing this sort of stuff. But Black Knight is also such an amazing send-off to the late 2000s era of the franchise. People call it the dark era, but I don't really want to call it that. With Jason and all the voice cast from Sonic X. It was such a good send-off. All of them did their acting perfectly. The music complemented their characters and their acting amazingly. And it's another soundtrack where if I wasn't a Sonic fan, I would still go out of my way to listen to this, because it is absolutely incredible. Next up, we have Sonic Colors, and this is going to be hard. Do I think this is an S tier or an A tier? Ooh, that's going to be difficult. You know what? Nostalgia is making it go into S tier, because this game is the reason why I became a Sonic fan, and the main reason is because of its music. It's another one of those titles where I would go back to it time and time again just for the music. Like it fits the level aesthetics and the level design perfectly. You know, it can be menacing, but also it was a lot more of a light-hearted story. So I wouldn't really say it's cinematic, but it is very Sonic sounding, especially like Terminal Velocity, Act 1 and 2, mainly Act 2. That is some of my favourite music in the series, and I want them to try and top that. I want another moment like that, where you just get this massive big band orchestra with, it's so good. So good. Planet Wisp especially is amazing too. Just that sort of happy feel, you know, happy calming feel. And it's also did what the classics did, where each act had its own music, and it does it so goddamn well. I love the music in Colours. It is such a breath of fresh air, and we'll come to Ultimate later on, but this doesn't hold a candle to Ultimate. This is such an amazing soundtrack, and if you haven't heard the original songs from Colours and you've only heard the Ultimate version, please do yourself a favour and listen to the OG soundtrack. Play the OG game. They were made for those stages, and it's just incredible. It's so good. Right, next up we have Generations, which is an easy S tier. Wow, we're on a roll of S tiers at the moment. Both classic and modern all have really good pieces of music. I don't know if there's any bad songs in Generations, like the console versions. I think all of it's amazing. They get the classic feel perfect. Again, like I said with Superstars, this should be the ways to do classic music from this point on, mixing old and new instruments together, but making it just fun, funky. You know, mix a bit of T-Lopes in there, and you've got a winner. You've got a winner formula there for me for music. It's just all of it works. It was a massive labour of love, you could tell. All the new classic songs for like the new stages. So you got like Speed Highway, you know, from the non-classic bit onwards, they sound amazing. All the modern songs sound amazing. All the classic songs sound amazing. What am I saying? Again, a soundtrack I will go to, and I do go to a lot of the time. Even all the remixes and stuff, they all sound great. Like Supersonic Racing isn't as good as the OG version, but it's still a fun song, I think, and I feel like it got a bit too big of a bad rap to it. But yeah, Generations is such a good soundtrack. Now, as you can see down here, we have Lost World. And if you know me, I cannot stand Lost World. Lost World is possibly the worst mainline title in the series, in my opinion. I think it's such a unfun, bad game. The story is so half-arsed. The villains are naff. They're just garbage Koopalings, and Koopalings in general are just bleh. And I just think you could do a lot better playing a different game. However, I bet you didn't expect this. Lost World has one of the best soundtracks in the entire series. I adore this soundtrack. You know, the mix of like banjo and like all these instruments we haven't heard really in a Sonic song before. It just sounds so fun. Like, so fun. It's one of my favourite uplifting soundtracks out there. But alongside that, you also have like the Sonic Colors approach, say with Planet Wisp. You have that in this game as well. You have rock style music. The final boss music, man, is so good. Like that Eggman theme is one of my favourites, and I never thought I would say that. It's really goddamn good, and if you haven't listened to Lost World soundtrack, I really advise you to, especially with like nice headphones, so you can hear all like the little bits and pieces in the background, because there's a lot going on, but it all works so well. And listen to it in stereo, not mono. Obviously, that's a given, but just being able to hear where all the different instruments are coming from. I know it's not like I don't think it was a big band or anything like that, but you get that feeling with how involved the music is and how much there is going on. It's a great listen. Cutscene wise, could be better, but still fine. Very colours, like, you know, that era. The music, man, of the stages. Honeycomb Highway is such a bop. Like, so good. And so we now end our constant S tier as we move on to Boom, Rise of Lyric, which is going into F tier, and I don't really need to say why. I'm going to, but one word: generic. It's so bare bones. Again, not a Sonic soundtrack. It is so just boring. The reason why I feel like Sonic music gets so much love put towards it is obviously it's really well made, really well put together, yada yada yada. But it's like I've been saying, it's also because you can go out of your way and listen to it outside of the games and really get to know the songs and love them, you know? This is why Rise of Lyric is terrible to me, is because it's just music. It doesn't have any soul to it. It doesn't have any depth. It's just there. Like, if somebody came up to me and was like, I asked, oh, what were you listening to? And they turn around and say the Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric soundtrack, I would run so fast away from them. I could not trust a person who goes out of their way to listen to Rise of Lyric soundtrack, purely because it is just music. It's just generic. There's nothing there. Right, next up we're going to have another controversial one. Sonic Forces. And this is going to go in D tier. For what it was trying to be, it's a humongous step down from Generations. I'm not a fan of the synthy style to this soundtrack. I think it can work. The final boss music, again, is one of my favourite pieces in the entire series. I could not stop listening to that piece when I first listened to it. It was so good. Some of the classic music is pretty bad. I love Ghost Town. That is awesome. They could have done a better job. I feel like that synth, the main synth, could work in other songs, but keeping it throughout the entire thing is not great, if you ask me. So it goes in D tier because it's below mediocre. It does have some good songs and a really good song, but the other songs water my expectation down so much. It makes me so sad. So it stays in D tier. Colors Ultimate Time. That goes in B tier. Why, you're asking? Well, yes, the original songs were in Colors Ultimate, like the original songs from Colors are in Ultimate. Fine. But I'm talking about the new ones, and I honestly feel like there really isn't an improvement. Maybe Tropical Resort is as good as Colors, the OG Colors. I don't think the rest of, like Planet Wisp, especially Act 1, that almost got me really angry, because Planet Wisp is such the whole point of the original song, in my opinion, was to show how peaceful this land is. And the fact that it's been built upon is really bad. It was like showing what was to come. And so starting off the first act with such a peaceful and tranquil song, with you starting in just a really long patch of grass, like a field with flowers around you, and then running into the mechanized portions. I think the music did a fantastic job in the original Colors. Now turn that over to a very electro heavy, like big beat heavy song, and in my opinion that throws the original message completely out of the window. I don't think it's a bad song, but it affects how you perceive Planet Wisp straight away, and I think it hinders it. In my opinion, the new songs should have been for the last 2 acts instead of doing new songs for the first 3. I just think the message is lost, and that's a problem when the whole story is about Eggman taking over these planets, and this being like one of the last planets that hasn't been fully taken over, and it's like the Wisp's home. It's all the other stuff is well composed. I just think it's a bit of a step down compared to OG Colors. That's just how I feel about it. Right, Frontiers. This goes in low A, and my reasoning is because I think the Titans are incredible. I love the Titans music. I think we can all agree on that. The final boss music is incredible. The Dear Father is something I heard the whole dearly. That is such a great song. But cyberspace, I was so hoping for different genres of music in cyberspace. I'm not saying they're poorly composed or anything like that. It's just, it's not my cup of tea. And I honestly really felt like if they were going to just have these 3 returning zone themes, having different styles of music would really help refresh that. But no, all of it's just heavy drum and bass and electronic music, which again I've said isn't my cup of tea. And I'm really hoping we sort of step away a little bit from that and have a bit more genres in, because otherwise I love the pinball music, you know, and the computer hacking music. They're great. Again, great examples of how Mega Drive music can be done really well in a new game. The challenge theme, I don't know if, you know, when you try and get an emerald, like where you cut down all the grass and things, that music is also awesome. I just think it's very, it's a really good soundtrack, don't get me wrong, but just a lot of it isn't my cup of tea. Like some of the island themes are very stuff I won't remember. Like they're just not the things I would remember. But as far as the Titan themes go, there would be 100% S tier. Pinball theme, S tier. The challenge theme, S tier. The computer hacking, S tier. Some of the island themes, there will be high AST. So that's why it's where it is because some of it is forgettable, but the memorable stuff is incredibly amazing. Some of the best in the series. Right, next up we have Sonic Drift. And I haven't, you know, I'm just going to put these in I haven't heard. Because I think I might have, but they're not. It would have been ages ago, like really long time ago. So I'm going to leave them in I haven't heard. Next up, Sonic R. S tier. Yes, I know it doesn't really work as a racing game soundtrack, but it's cheesy. It is just happy-go-lucky, puts a smile on your face. It's that good. So I'm going to have to pull it in S. It is just that good of a game soundtrack. Like, for such a mediocre game for a lot of people, it's one that is remembered because of its music. That is the best thing about it. The credits music, like, it's some of the best classic music out there. And if you haven't listened to classic vocal music, like classic Sonic vocal music, do yourself a favour, because there's not many, but all of them are amazing. And Sonic R is no different. All of it is so fun, uplifting, doesn't work in a racing game, but it's very of the era, and if you want to pick me up, you listen to this soundtrack, you know? So yeah, S tier, easy. And next up, Sonic Riders. That's easy A tier. It's going to be high A because I actually prefer it over the Rush series of music. It's great. I think it does what it needs to. It's very futuristic sounding, but it doesn't go too heavy on drum and bass in most of the areas, and it works well for a racing game especially. Having heavy drum and bass works. I just think it doesn't work in platforming games and things like that. But for an extreme gear racing game, it not being everywhere is fine. I really like it. I think it's very futuristic, but sticking with the high beat, you know, Sonic feel, it works. I really do like it. I haven't really got much to say about it. So yeah. Next up we have Zero Gravity, and I'm going to be honest, I've only heard one song from this, so I'm actually going to put this here because I don't think it'll be fair me trying to like listen and judge only on like one song. For instance, like with Boom in the past, like earlier, I did listen to a couple, but that was because it was a extremely forgettable soundtrack. So yeah, I don't think it's fair. It's definitely a soundtrack I'm going to need to fully get into more. But as for now, I'm going to leave it with Sonic Drift and Sonic Drift 2, and I haven't heard. Free Riders is B tier. It's extremely cheesy, but I like it. It's not better than Frontiers or anything like that. Yeah, Free Riders is extremely cheesy. It's extremely, you know, in your face, especially with Free. But that is a fun song. Soundtrack wise, if there's one to end on, it's a great soundtrack to end on, you know, for a series. It's fun, upbeat, does the job, still feels like a Sonic soundtrack, still feels like a racing soundtrack, so it does it well. Great rival series, haven't played them, so you go here, there we go. I've obviously heard the Race to Win music, that's about it. So, just like Riders Zero Gravity, going in haven't heard. Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing, really, really, really good soundtrack. It's going to go in B tier, purely because a lot of it is just remixes or just straight ports of music from their games, from the characters' games. The menus and that are fine, they're kind of forgettable, but that's why it's in B tier, so yeah. Now we have a different story. Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing Transformed, which I believe should go in A tier. It's such a it's a really, really damn good pack of songs. They are really, again, the menus and things like that are a bit forgettable, but the actual tracks themselves have some of the best music in a racing game. I think it's they fit well with the theming, the also craziness of the transforming cars. It's great. I haven't really got much to say about it because it's just fun. They're great songs. They fit with the track well. I'm repeating myself, so I'm just gonna carry on. TSR S tier. I know for some reason a lot of people say if you like this soundtrack, then you have no taste in music. Meh. I love the soundtrack. It's one of the best soundtracks recently, if you ask me. I like it more than the Frontiers as a soundtrack, as a full soundtrack. I think it pretty much every single song in this. No, I won't say pretty much. Every single song in this game is great. I love it, and it also shows Sky Road shows how you can make the Forces synth sound amazing. I love that song to death. Like, all of the songs are great, but even like the track intros, the final lap stuff, the lap finish, the race finish stuff. Mwah, chef's kiss. Great. Oh god, now we're at the Olympic Games stuff. Okay. I'm just going to run through these. I'm not going to really explain why. I'm just going to put them where I believe they should go. C tier, C tier, C tier, C tier. Actually, no, I'm going to put this in high C tier. There we go. A tier. I haven't heard you. B tier, let's put you above Colours Ultimate. A tier, I haven't heard you. You are extremely middle of the road, so I'm actually going to put you in low C tier. Haven't played Waku Waku. Sega Sonic, here we go. We will go A tier. Cosmic Fighter, I haven't played it. Sega Sonic Popcorn Shop, haven't heard it, I've seen it. Sonic the Fighters, okay, now we're going to stop and talk about this one. This goes in A tier, there we go. That's what I'm putting. This game's music is so underrated. I can understand if it's a bit hard to get into, but I love it so goddamn much. Yeah, I think it's some of the best fighting music out there, just for how chaotic it is. It's such a perfect soundtrack for a cartoony fighting game. And by a cartoony, you know, for fighters, if you've seen Fighters, it is slapstick as hell, and I want a Fighters 2
with classic characters, because that style of rubber hose, early like Looney Tunes era slapstick works wonders with the classic game, and the music fits it so well. Chaotic, goofy, the character themes are awesome. It's really nice hearing different themes for familiar zones like Mushroom Hill and all that. It's cool. It's definitely something I would recommend if you are, for instance, like writing and you need to keep your head down and consistently keep on going and not get distracted. It's one of those soundtracks where it keeps you going, and it's one to look out for. It's such a good soundtrack. Oh god, I just saw what's next. Right, Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood. I think we can all agree with this. This is the worst soundtrack in the entire series, purely for the fact that they ruin Sonic, like our old school Sonic songs, and the new songs that they do have are terrible. The game in general is just naff. It's just all over the place, and I would like to see another crack at an RPG. That would be really cool, but this one isn't really bad. I don't really have to say much else. Sega Superstars Tennis. This one is fine. It goes with the rest of the it's okay songs like the Olympic Games and stuff. So same with Superstars Tennis. I think it's fun. I think it's like the game itself is fun, and it's just the same problem with the OG All Stars Racing, where it's just songs from said games reused. But I actually think the main music for Superstars Tennis is a lot more generic than All Stars Racing, so that's why it's a lot lower. Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog, S tier, love it. Dream Gear sequence, all of the train car stuff is all amazing. Also hearing Sonic's theme back is, oh, that made me smile. And the final boss, whatever you want to call it, that is honestly one of the best. I keep saying one of the best because I can't say it is the best, because I like a lot of the songs recently, but for what it was doing and for a game that came out of nowhere with Shadow Dropped and was an April Fool's joke, it is a phenomenal soundtrack, one that I keep going back to and would have on stream when I do drawing time and things. It's one of those OSTs where it's a lot of fun, and it, because of the game style, it can just perfectly be in the background. So again, if you want to relax or something, a lot of this soundtrack is for you. Okay, so we have Sonic 3 left, and you know what? Because I did Sonic 3 with Sonic and Knuckles at the top, I'm actually going to make this the prototype version of Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Sorry, the Sonic 3 soundtrack, not Sonic 3 and Knuckles. And that goes in S tier. I think the proto music is just as good as if what we got. I adore Carnival Night's music. Launch Base's music is actually really good. It's just Ice Cap, but even that is good. It's just Ice Cap is so iconic that hearing something different is a bit alien. But yeah, this is the completed version of the tier list. It only took us 2 hours 12 minutes. Bloody hell. My voice is dying, as you could probably hear, but yeah, this is my favourite OSTs from the games from best to worst. So yeah, you're probably wondering why Sonic X Vapor and Speed Sim are here in C tier. It's because they use reused music, but the reused music is good. But yeah, this is mine. Let me know what you think down below, and if you want to see more like longer chill videos like this with not much editing to bide the time between big gaps between like other videos and things. 'Cause I could do more tier list stuff or other things, kind of like this, maybe talking about game collections and things. But yeah, let me also show you guys what some other people in the community's lists look like. If you want to be at an end of a video like this, then join the Discord server. We'll be doing a lot more stuff like this in the future. Yeah, weren't they all cool? How cool is like seeing other people's opinion and being on video? That like I said, expect more of that in the future. But for now, my voice is dying, so thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you all in the next one. Take care.